Hello, fellow adventurers! There is so much to talk about in gaming, but that's what the cool kids do, and you guys seem pretty cool, so let's go! Today, we're digging into a little treasure trove hidden in the 5e DMG. For an experienced DM and world builder, the book doesn't offer a whole lot. However, I believe it's always good to get a fresh perspective. That's why I'm here, working on a Sunday during early October. It's hot outside. Well, it was when I wrote this. Now it's seasonable. We may get a freeze this week. My goal isn't to teach you world building. You already know how to do that. I'm just trying to add some little snippet of information that might inspire you. Page 112 of the DMG is a section called Settlements. It didn't change the way I world build, but it provoked some new thinking. Let's get into it. On the very first chart, the entry reads, Race Relations. Way to get controversial right off the hop. There's a 50-50 chance of harmony, so there's a good chance the whole purpose of this chart is just to say, skip this chart. If you don't get harmony, you dive into a quagmire of racism, oppression, inequality, and inequity. You roll a 20. Racial minority oppresses majority. The party cries out in unison, slay the oppressors. It's like the game wants to turn you into murder hobos. So the truth is, my campaign worlds always take a deep look into race and ethnicity. I really shouldn't make fun of this chart. It could be very useful for starting world builders. I see it helpful in two distinct situations. Number one, I need to world build a town, but I feel like I'm in a rut. In this case, you make some dice rolls. Maybe on a 1 to 10, you just roll again, taking the first actually interesting roll, but making it an increasingly minor problem the longer it takes you to get there. In other words, if you roll a 15 right off the top, racial majority are conquerors. The conquest problems are the central theme to the town. Maybe it's a problem to be solved. However, if you roll a 4, then a 6, then a 15, the town is still ruled by conquerors, but it doesn't affect day-to-day business. Maybe it's the status quo, has been for a few years, or maybe the citizens are glad they are under new management. So how would you make this a problem to be solved? It could go a lot of different ways. It could be a straight-up fight. The party might have to lead a rebellion. Perhaps the only solution is to work within the new administration, making things better, but ultimately leaving them in charge. Now really, that's just the easy stuff. I'm all into low-hanging fruit. If you want to make it more complicated, maybe their only route to success is to form a coalition of local towns to drive out the conquerors. What if they had to go full political, full diplomacy, and appeal to the new administration's overlords? Just remember, however you want the party to solve it, they're not going to do it that way. They'll do an end around. They'll go a completely different direction. They may ignore the thing. So make sure you have all your bases covered to some extent. You can adapt from there. The second circumstance that makes these charts absolutely necessary is that mid-session crisis where the little dot on the map, a town that you barely considered naming, is suddenly extremely important, and there are questions that you need the answers to. The party is on a long trek, and you've prepared to run it. Your random encounters are ready. Roadside caves plotted, natural perils loaded and ready to fire. Early in the session, the party asks, are we passing any small towns or villages? You tell them sure, at least once a week. Resupply is easy. You can even get a room for a night and get off the road. Well, we've decided we're going to rest for a while. The next village we come to, we're going to stay. Okay, well, you get to the next town. There's an inn. How long would you like to stay? Maybe a week? Another player perks up. I like it here. We'll stay a few months. Yet another. Hey, what's the town like? For a new DM, this can be a disaster. But charts like this will help you create an entertaining session on the fly. In this scenario, I wouldn't roll randomly. I would just pick something that I know I can work with. Personally, I like the refugee problem. Maybe there's a few hundred desperate souls from the next town down the road. Remember those not-so-random encounters you planned? Modify one. Now that hill giant that was going to be a roadside encounter has invaded the town, driving all these guys out. you've instantly given the party a reason to keep moving, and maybe gotten their minds back on the road. If not, at least you've got something to keep them busy while you have time to think about it. So what is there to think about? There's a good chance at some point the party is going to meet someone from the town authority. You can equate even a low-level adventuring team to a band of merchants or a wealthy house. In a village, they may be the wealthiest people there. They will almost certainly be in the top 10, and they will affect the economy. Your players are important to the world around them, and the local headman, woman, or otherwise will want to check them out. The outer extremes of the chart are the easiest. 1 through 8 means the leader is firmly in charge. If the characters are just passing through, they'll conduct their business and move on. Same goes for 17 to 20. Everything else in between is a hook, a trap, a reason for the party to stay and get involved, so be prepared. Not all these possibilities will be something you can work with. The implications might not fit into the rest of your plans for the world you've created. Be prepared to roll again, or just heavily modify it to what you need it to be. I have a few favorites here, a roll of an 11, and maybe the party asks to see the mayor. They're invited to a large hall and suddenly find themselves in front of a cloud giant, or better yet, a mind flayer. If you want to present your party with a political challenge, roll a 10, or maybe a 16. Put a few limits in place so there's a price to pay if the party goes all stabby-stabby. Then, make sure you have a convincing argument for all sides concerned. Making the player choose between equals is a great way to help them build strong characters. On that 16, the eldest might be a daughter. She's a pretty good choice, but women don't usually rule in your part of the world. The oldest boy is competent at best. He kind of wants the job, and he's popular with his drinking buddies. Unfortunately, one is a creepy kind of dude who's super manipulative. Very sketchy. Then there's the royal cousin. Realistically, he's the best choice, but you've got to convince the town of his legitimacy. Let's see what's next. Ooh, yet another chart. Notable traits. This could be fun. So this chart's great, but it brings up an immediate point. You need a development document. That's a place where you're going to put all your interesting tidbits that help you world build. Why do I bring it up? Well, when I'm done with this video, first thing I'm doing is taking some of these charts and merging them into my own development document. I've already got a list of some pretty cool stuff, but I'm always adding. All these charts can be super expanded and make them more interesting for your future endeavors. Just remember, once you've made a decision, you don't have to make it again if you record it and remember it. Now let's get into it. How are you going to approach this sucker? The first thing I saw was canals. If I rolled that randomly, I'd probably blanch. However, I kind of want to make a canal city now, or maybe a cultural trait where the whole nation is into canal building. Yeah, Trace Lavon, you could have just gotten canal works placed in all your cities. I wonder if my NPCs will ever visit there. Now, something that strikes me, this chart is for a little bit bigger settlement than I've been picturing. I'm not sure a canal network is a good idea in a small 1,000 pop town. You could probably come up with something, though. I almost want to roll twice for emphasis and use the rest of this chart for world building questions like, what's my city's major export? Is there a landmark here? Is there a major institution or an outpost nearby? Is there one thing that this town is known for? You can tie this stuff together too. Maybe that creepy and manipulative guy from earlier is tied to the town's sinister past. Moving on, more traits, but now we're calling them features. This is a perfect example of converting gems like this into your own document. The first thing I'm going to do is smash these two charts together. Let's take a closer look at what we have. Rude, greedy, piety. So these things have more to do with the personality of the town. I'm still going to smash them together, by the way. I'm thinking by the time you get to this point, you've already got a pretty good idea of that sort of thing. So maybe that's a lesson in how you're supposed to use these charts to start with. When we do our exercise later, I'll make sure and do all my rolls first, then build from there. What if we roll a 17? Political intrigue. Would you be disappointed if you had already thought through the ruler status chart? I suppose the roll could mean that you amplify your problems you've already created. Maybe add a layer? If you rolled something stable, does it become less so? We'll try a 9. Dark magic. Well, that leaves a lot to the imagination. Is this something by divine will? A curse? You can make it a solvable problem, or just something they have to live with. Maybe it's even part of the economy. There's magical gems that can be harvested here, but the miners are doomed to illness after just a few years of working in the mines. I don't mind the vagueness of the chart. It's giving you an opportunity to create past it. Finally, the last section on page 112, Current Calamity. This looks like it could be fun. This is certainly another chart that you could build on, but there's already some interesting things at work here. Of course, every one of them is a hook for PC involvement. However, it doesn't have to be a problem that they can solve. I would suggest if something doesn't spark an idea right off, roll on the chart and roll again for severity. On a d20, 10 means it's suited for the party to deal with. Less than a 10, it's something beneath them. Now, they might choose to handle it anyway and just move on like gangsters. Oh, please, there are undead in the graveyard. We kill the undead. Oh, you're heroes. Again. All right, what are you doing next? You might want to develop your timelines here too. Did the calamity just happen? Is it ongoing? Is it something predicted to happen? If you roll on this chart every time the party comes into a new town, they might just gain the reputation of the harbingers of doom. Let's try a 16, internal strife. Again, this could be anything. Is it just amplifying an earlier roll? Or are things about to go south for the winter? Maybe there's a feud between two houses, or the Dockworkers Guild is on strike until a better bunkhouse is built. Hey, what about a 10? A powerful wizard has moved into town. That's a fun one. Does he want to get involved in the government? Or is he just retiring and needs a quiet place to build the retirement tower of his dreams? Oh, wait, hold on. This is supposed to be a calamity. Seems a little overdramatic. Did the writers of the chart intend for him to be a bad guy? I guess so. It's hard to tell what they wanted, to be honest. But, realistically, some product manager probably told a writer, hey, I need 1,000 words on world building a settlement. Then some editor said, we don't have room, but we'll print the charts. That's it for now. Anyway, this all only matters as much as you want it to. The only way to take these charts is as inspiration for your own creativity. D&D is just a framework of rules in which you can run your own game. My content is the same. My hope is to stir one fresh idea in that noggin of yours. That's all, nothing else. Well, apparently I've lost my dice rolling segment, so enjoy this fine cinematic experience while we sum up the rolls I actually got. 16 for the first chart. That's racial minority of conquerors. On chart 2, we have a 1 for fair, respected, and just. 19, 19, and 17. Well, you know what they say. The dice don't lie. 17 for a sinister reputation. 19 is for sight of important tomb or graveyard, times 2 because I rolled it twice. Finally, what I said I would emphasize, a 14 for education. And last, a crisis of religious sects struggling for power. So how would you resolve these rolls? Everybody's going to be different, but if you don't have an idea right off, it's probably because you're thinking too hard. Keep it simple. What we have here is a little conflict in our fair town. It's been going on for some time, and it will likely continue to be a problem. When the adventurers come into town, they get an explanation, their first taste of the town, from a little old woman doing gardening in her front yard. That shrine over there, that's the so-called resting place of Headless Tom, except he ain't exactly resting, is he? A pretty solid portion of the town, mostly the humans, think that old Headless Tom is a hero. He's the one who put an end to the line of Thatch. That mausoleum over there, that's where most of the Hatch family is buried, particularly old Grandpa Hatch. It was his grandson that Headless Tom killed. That was supposed to raise the curse on this damn little town. No, little damned town. When it happened last year. Instead, Thatch partisans beheaded Headless Tom. That's what you got out of those rolls, right? Well, let's continue. That ain't the half of it. Most of it has to do with that big library tower over there. Well, it probably does. You see, they study undead. Special undead. They're one of the biggest universities concerned with necromancy in the whole kingdom. They call these things the returned. Well, I don't know what they returned from, because most of them never even left. These graveyards, there's always people coming back. Sometimes for a few hours, sometimes to stay. Shit, my grandma Helen, she was gone for a year when I walked into the kitchen and she was just there making biscuits. We ate and we talked and she just stopped. Ugh, dead again. For good, this time, I guess. She ain't been back since. Of course you're going to talk to the bartender to get the rest of the story. Yeah, they're always feuding. The line of Thatch, fighting it out with the followers of Tom. It was constant. Always fighting, people getting killed. Then the elves came. It was the school that invited them. Old Captain Silverhair over there come in take over. Damn filthy tree-walking elves. I guess they're all right. Silverhair's turned out to be pretty fair. Fair like a fairy. Elves are fairykin, right? I don't know about that kind of stuff. He even got Headless Tom and Grandpa Thatch to quit fighting. It's weird seeing them chumming it up, running around together, you know, on account of both of them being dead and always mad at each other. So where are you folks from? We don't exactly get many visitors around here. So many people that used to be dead and aren't exactly alive, still around, tends to put everyone on edge. Think they're going to get turned into a vampire or something. In case you didn't catch everything in the narrative there, we have a simple little town with a couple of factions that were at each other's throats. Each side supported their undead hero, and tensions were running high. The local school, that happens to be a school of necromancy, set up to study these and other occurrences of people rising from the dead. Turns out they couldn't do their work with all the feuding going on, so they called on the local elven settlement, who sent a humanitarian team to take over and quell the violence. So far, the lead elf seems to be doing a pretty good job. The hooks here are largely passive, as the main points of contention are somewhat settled. Unresolved issues include the elves' right to be here. Do they have the authority to intervene? And why doesn't death seem to be permanent? These don't have to be solvable problems for the players. The elven occupiers can be as strong as you need them to be. Meanwhile, the school might be a good source of forbidden knowledge. They'll have experts on undead and adjacent fields. It might be fun to approach the place as an Addams Family style diversion. Just because it's creepy doesn't mean it has to be serious. Maybe some of the townsfolk have undead pets. On the other hand, it could be something sinister is really going on. It could be anything you want it to be. Perhaps the school officials are the ones causing the problem. What if the party found out the school had roots here before the phenomenon began to occur? Like anything, you could make as much of it as you want to. It could be turned into an in-depth quest, or just an interesting town the party spent a few weeks in on their way to a destination. Speaking of destinations, we've reached ours. I'm glad you could all stop in today. I really value these little chats. Check in with your friends today and spend some time in the company of those you trust. If you don't have that, reach out. There are people all over the world just looking for a friend, and you could be the one they're looking for. If you have a moment, do the stuff. Leave a like, comment, and sub. It all really helps. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day. Until next time, cheers. My goal isn't to teach you world building. It's just to help you do what you're ever doing. You can tie this stuff together too. Maybe that creepy minute. What if the party found out some members predated the phenomenon?